My name is Jared Decarlo. I'm 52 years old and I'm in Southern California. What brought me to Joyous was prior to this, I had been suffering with depression and anxiety like pretty much my whole life, it seems like. And I tried all the different SSRIs and anti-anxiety medications. None of them seemed to work. Like they worked for a little bit and then they'd stop and they had horrible side effects, all of them. About 10 years ago or so, I stopped doing them. I just went off of them completely because I didn't want to deal with the side effects anymore. And it took a long time to get off of them and it was a horrible withdrawal and all this ugly experience for it. But I was better off doing that. I then kind of in that period, that time, fell into like a because the symptoms came back and everything. I had like a lot of trauma going on. I'd had like a house fire that where I lost everything in my house and my animals and all that. And I went through that. And then my mom had a stroke a month later, and I was quickly thrown into being a caregiver full time. Didn't have the time to process anything that I'd gone through at all. And this was all without any antidepressants or anything like that when that had happened. I then fell into a pattern of self-medicating that went down an ugly road for about 5 years, 6 years, 6 years actually. Luckily, I always had something in me that was like, okay, pull it together. You got to pull it together. Something came up. That voice always came up in me. I started doing research on different alternative holistic treatments for it. And prior to this, I had done a lot of yoga and worked on myself spiritually a lot. After this trauma of the fire and all this and the stroke and my mom's doing that, I kind of lost it a little bit. I was just like not in the right frame of mind. And then the self-medicating thing kind of worked for a minute, and then that had its own repercussions. So I decided to look into something more holistic. And that's when I started doing research and I came across ketamine and I came across Joyous. And I started it and was still, I had stopped doing the self-medicating thing. And so I was now going through like withdrawal from that, like more just mental withdrawal, if anything. I started using methamphetamine. I started doing that, and I did that mainly as a way to one when I was having to stay like having to take care of my mom 24/7 all the time, and I didn't have the only time that I had to myself was at nighttime. That plus not wanting to sleep very much because I was dealing with the trauma from the house fire and all that stuff still, and having all these really bad nightmares. I had gone in to see a therapist, and she gave me diagnosed me with PTSD, acute PTSD. I didn't want to get too. She wanted to put me on medication. I didn't want to start with that, and because I wasn't in the right mindset, I said, I need to be like clear from everything in order for me to even know before you start giving me diagnosis and start giving me pills for things. She agreed with that. White knuckled it through that, and I stopped doing all of that. No drugs. I've been on drugs for it's been 11 months now, and I haven't done anything like that. And I started ketamine around 10 months ago, and the ketamine treatment, like with Joyous, was amazing. Like it started, I right away I noticed the difference. Back in the day, I'd heard about people were doing ketamine like in clubs and all that kind of stuff. And I tried it once, and I remember thinking, "Whoa, this was." I only tried it once, and that was a long time ago. And I was like, I remember it was a different experience because I remember it made me see things in a different way. It was a whole different experience. So I had always had that in the back of my mind. So when I went on and I did a research on it, Joyous came up, and well, before that, all the IV transfusions and stuff came up. And that being way out of my cost range, what I could pay for, and not really an option, I started looking at the other options, and Joyous was on there, and you guys were, I think, kind of just starting. It was like it was different, and there was all this talk about microdosing versus the infusions and all that kind of stuff. And I said, this is one that's more accessible to me. I can afford it. The stories that I was hearing from it were positive, and I liked the idea of doing a smaller dose of it rather than having to go to a clinic down in Los Angeles and sit there for 2 hours and do that whole thing. Either way, I knew that ketamine, from what I was reading and from the little experience I'd had with it, was something that I had to try because everything else was failing, and I was kind of at my wit's end as to what I was going to do and how I was going to do it. So I just kind of took the chance, and Joyous, I got a appointment with somebody online and spoke with them. I did the evaluation to see if I was a candidate for it, and everything went smoothly. I got it in the mail, and I started doing the program with getting started on the portal, and I just followed it, did the meditations, and I started seeing it almost instantly. Like I was like I noticed the difference like when I first did even to the 15 milligrams, like I noticed it. But then when it got up to like 60, 70 milligrams, that's when I could notice a huge difference. And now I'm at the 120, and I've been at 120 for some time now, and it feels right. Like I don't feel like I need more. I don't feel like I need, I mean, if anything, it's like as I start developing my practice more, it's kind of like I still use it, but I don't feel like I need it necessarily as much as I had done, because it feels like it's starting to do something with my brain a little bit more, like something's happening where it's like, okay, I still enjoy it and I'm still doing it, and I don't have any plans on like stopping it in the near future. But I do know that it's like, for me, it's been like a bridge to get to where I need to get. I do it first thing in the morning. I was doing a split dose in the beginning because I found that that helped me with the anxiety that I was having at that point. But as I worked on my meditation and just kept taking the medicine, I found that for me, I take it first thing in the morning, and I'll usually put on my ear pods and I'll listen to a playlist. And, like I have my ketamine playlists that I'll do, and I'll listen to that. I set an intention before I do it. And for me, it's being, a lot of the times, it's to be responsive rather than reactive to situations in life, just to be more responsive rather than reactive. And I'll say that in my head, and then I'll let that go, and I don't hang on to it much, and I let myself go with the medicine and listen to the music. And then from there I'll do a meditation after that, and about 30, 40 minutes after that I'll do a meditation, and then I do my yoga practice, and then I go about my day. And it's like, I feel that has been like, that's gotten more and more fine-tuned and more routine, and the results have been amazing. Like, it's still, I took it early this morning, and it's like 3 o'clock, and I still feel good, and it's just been like that consistently, and it's been getting better and better that way. So yeah, it's been good. For me, it was like the bridge between where I was at mentally and getting more in touch with my spirituality, because it's actually had a huge spiritual effect on my life, like profound effect on my life, and it's allowed me to get back to where I was prior to all this stuff. Back to my yoga practice, I recently went through an inner engineering program, and I'm doing meditation, Kriya yoga regularly, and practicing mindfulness, and that has just blossomed more and more, and that's gone hand in hand with the ketamine treatment. It's really been amazing. Like, I also tried macro dosing. I took a month off, and I tried to do a macro dosing at home thing, which was good, but different in a different way. I came back to Joyous just because I didn't feel that I needed that heavy immersion, that much of an immersion to it. And I found that this enabled me to get back to myself and do the things to help myself. It's like an act. It takes action on my part. It's not just like a magic pill and everything's fine. So but it enabled me to like get my mind thinking, to get into that mind thought, and to actually do the work that is needed to get myself better. And that, with what you guys offer as far as meditation, it just went hand in hand. And so, like, now my life is completely different, like totally total change, and I owe a huge amount of that to what you guys gave me. I mean, that was like the bridge that got me to where I'm at, and I'm also doing the footwork on it too. But I didn't have access to that before. I just didn't have the access that I do have now. It's just been amazing. It's been this unfolding, this constant like unfolding of like getting back to myself, and getting grounded, and getting in touch with my spiritual connection and my true nature. And it's opened up different avenues for my career, and it's just made a huge difference. Like, I can't say enough about it. Like, I try and tell people about it, and of course people are like, oh, ketamine, oh, you're doing psychedelics. They have this whole other like thing that I'm doing. They don't understand. So in any chance that I get to educate people about it and share my experience, I don't say go down the road I went necessarily, but this is what I've done to get where I've gotten, and it's been very helpful to me. My mom suffered a massive stroke, and before that, she also has a lot of anxiety and depression, and mental health stuff that she's dealing with. So every day is a true test for me, like, as far as dealing with that, and not before before I started doing the treatment, I would be very reactive, and she be very mean, and say some horrible things, and and we'd get engaged in these back and forth kind of things, and I'd end up feeling horrible about it, and it was such a draining experience. I didn't know how I was going to even keep doing it anymore because it was just like I thought I'm just gonna have to just pack up and leave, or I don't know, because it's I'm the only one taking care of her. It's a lot of responsibility, very reactive, and it would get very heated, and that in the past would have caused me to go back to self-medicating. It would cause me that loop that I would get caught in. Now there's a pause, like there's a pause, and there's a I see it differently. I don't take it on. It's not me. That's not my thing. That's her thing. I don't have to I take it on and let that affect me. And my reaction isn't a reaction, it's more of a response to it. And I'm able to respond more compassionately and more real and state where I'm at and put boundaries and not be affected by it. It doesn't ruin my day anymore. It doesn't and just by doing adjusting my approach to it or my response to it has also changed her interaction with me. So it's like it doesn't get heightened. It doesn't keep going crazier until before we know it, it just spirals out of control and it's just a horrible feeling. It doesn't ever get to that anymore. Ketamine to me was like it's like honey on the system. It feels like a soothing kind of thing. Whereas antidepressants felt more like a metallic metal kind of like a not felt very unnatural to me or something. It didn't have the same effect as ketamine did. Ketamine seemed to be more open my mind more to things and open more doors to a deeper experience of myself and of life. Whereas antidepressants seemed to be more of a band-aid. They didn't seem like they just seemed like they stopped the symptoms, but they didn't help you get to the core of what was going on. And I feel that with ketamine, it did something to the brain where it allows me to have a deeper experience. And I think part of that is the kind of the psychedelic experience, but it that seems like that's almost a side effect of what the ketamine was doing for me was the psychedelic kind of part of it. And with microdosing, it's not anywhere near as what it was with macrodosing. Like it's like that's like you go on a whole trip kind of thing. And this is a more subtle version of that where I can function and still maintain my and go about my day and work and not become so disassociative that I'm out of it or anything like that. Although even that had its benefits as well. That going getting immersed in it like that and then feeling the results 2 to 3 days later. I just didn't find that as sustaining as I do with microdosing. Like I find that it's more sustaining and it helped a great deal more than antidepressants ever did with anxiety, more long term as effect. And it doesn't have the same effects as like Xanax and having to take, I was taking antidepressants and then having to take a Xanax to calm that down because it made me too high strung or something. It was too much of an uplifting thing, and then it was this that and having to take different pills to counteract that, and it was just getting too crazy. So this one, it's very much more gentle, opening your mind. It just opens your mind. It opens a different part of my mind and my consciousness and awareness of things, and helps me make better choices, which I think is more of a holistic approach and more of a long term that's going to have more better results. The fact that I can actually do the work that people do that don't have problems with anxiety and depression, that can do it, and that I can show up to my yoga mat and I can show up and meditate and I can do my actual practice and follow through with it and see results. I never got that with antidepressants because that had such a numbing effect on me, and that was such a numbing, and it had all those other side effects that just were counterproductive, and they just ended up making my depression more worse, with sexual side effects and and other things as well. So it's like this, I don't have that with this. I didn't have that experience at all. And the two are I think are totally different in the way that they affect or have affected and treated my depression and my anxiety. It's a totally different thing. I don't know. Some people do it hand in hand, I guess they do both, but I found that I didn't need that, and I just didn't want to be part of the whole pharmaceutical thing and just, taking a pill for this and taking a pill for that. And I go on the Joyous portal a lot, and I encourage a lot of people because they're saying, "Oh, it's how long does it take to work?" And it's a process. And I always tell people you have to do the work. It's not like there is work to do, and people I think are just so used to in our society just taking something and expecting a quick fix and not doing any of the work. And this just has made it a lot more easier to do that. Joyous was It was awesome that they actually had some financial assistance for me because being a full-time caregiver for my mom and I wasn't able to do my job as a hairstylist. which I was doing for 32 years because she required so much time for me. So I was doing Uber and Lyft on the side and trying to juggle that, and I don't get paid for being a caregiver for her. So it's like I was juggling that, but then they did a thing where they offered financial assistance, which allowed me to come back in and has been great. That's where I'm at with it now.